This is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Ashley Northcutt. Ashley Northcutt is the president of National Women's Affordable Housing Network. I believe you pronounce it WAHN, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And it's a 501c3 organization focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. WAHN provides support to and really empowers women working in the industry with intentional connection with education and active allianceship or allyship, maybe you call it. Allyship? How do you say that for yourself?
Allyship.
Allyship, okay. The network includes representatives from government agencies, from lenders and other financial institutions, investors, developers, professional service providers, and even nonprofit organizations. So welcome, Ashley.
Well, thank you so much for having me and Women's Affordable Housing Network.
As a person directly involved in affordable housing since 1963, I'm really interested in this new organization you've started. You were working as an accounting professional, I believe, as a partner in a tax firm, is that right?
That's correct.
And then you recently pivoted over to managing this new network full time. So tell me what led up to starting this organization and kind of what's your vision for it?
Sure. So this organization was started by Rochelle Patton and Ann Cohn in Atlanta in 2007 as an informal group getting together to talk about what are some challenges and success stories that women are facing in affordable housing at the time, because we are a minority in that industry, as you know, especially in 1963, I cannot imagine. Rochelle speaks across the country, and so does Ann. When I moved to Atlanta in 2013, I went to one of their educational luncheons that they were hosting because they had grown from informal group get together to, hey, there's so many people interested, let's host a luncheon. They sold out at 90 people, and that again was in 2007. So it continued to grow, and they did that quarterly. I moved in 2013 to Atlanta and went to one of the luncheons and was blown away. It was very encouraging. It was very supportive and welcoming. I felt like one of them from the beginning, and there was probably 120 people in the room. So I asked immediately how to get more involved. A friend of mine, Jill, who was not my friend at the time, also asked how to get involved. And Ann and Rochelle thought it was a good time to change leadership because they've been doing it about 10 years. So Jill and I took over. Jill Cromartie, if everyone knows Jill Cromartie, a lot of people know Jill, but she's very, how do I say this? We stay in line with Jill. So Jill wanted to form a 501c3 and bring more formality to the group. So we continued the quarterly luncheons, which were around education, policy, and self-care. We had 2 happy hours each year. We added community service. We added sponsorship and scholarship. So we grew that with membership. And so coupled with us going to conferences around the country and Rochelle and Ann, other states were hearing about this, and we were actually being approached a lot. Hey, how do we do this in our state? So we connected with people from Ohio, North Carolina, Indianapolis, and Texas. And in 2020, I suggested we form a national group and a national board so that as all the chapters continue to evolve across the states, there's consistency and it was not total chaos launching chapters all over the place. So it has been a group effort for sure. I'm surrounded by amazing women that we meet weekly planning, and we now host and we have 9 active chapters effective 12/31/2022. We are bringing 18 through the new chapter curriculum now, so there'll be 27 chapters at the end of the year.
That's tremendous. You know, a lot of people use that term affordable housing differently. For some, it means just subsidized housing. For others, they've broadened it, and it might mean tax credit, or it might mean some other type of housing, maybe even getting to the point where you have tiny houses, or you have something, you know, that's more affordable to build. Now, tell me what your real definition of this is.
Sure. anything to get someone in a house. So we are firm believers, and I'm a firm believer that if you have housing stability, and along with that comes food stability, if you have housing stability, you are in a different echelon for success. If you cannot have a home to go to that is safe and clean for your health, for sleep, it's very hard to be a productive member of society. So it did start in the low income housing program, so Section 48, but even later this year, we're scheduled to have creative housing solutions as a panel, because we are focused on any type of way to get housing. We are firm believers that there's never a way to build enough affordable housing. There's two sides of the equation. So any type of affordable housing we can build, and then education for people to increase their capability of jobs and be able to expand the definition of what's affordable to their family. So we're open to everything to get a roof, a safe, healthy roof over people's heads.
Okay, so you're talking about more than just private developers who produce housing and housing authorities. You're talking about women who might champion a more affordable housing, or where else would you draw your membership from?
Sure. So developers, we do work with housing authorities and state agencies. We have members from all across the board, but we also have we're introduced to a lot of people across the country. So there's an initiative right now with some very large companies that are actually buying housing in their locations. So Vail Resorts, Disney, there are some big box stores that I'm not going to name quite yet, but that are buying housing in their areas to make sure the employees can live close enough to work at the places they need employment. So we hear about that. I was at a presentation last week in Atlanta where there's kind of a Shark Tank idea. And what they're doing is having investors come to a room, and developers are coming in and presenting different development opportunities. And everyone's kind of coming together, private, public together, to figure out how to fund this, how to get more housing. So we're open to all anything creative, again, to get housing over people.
Well, that sounds interesting. I think even Amazon is doing that as they locate their new plants or whatever, warehouses around the country.
You're right.
Yeah. What do you see as the biggest challenges for women in affordable housing today?
The biggest challenges that always come to mind are, once you get to what you believe is your level of success. So not every woman wants to be C-suite. Not every woman wants to stay put in the career where they are. So, but once you get to the point that you want in your career, you have to be able to sustain that. And that takes support, that takes encouragement, that takes flexibility. And I think that's coupled with my second point, which is we still remain the primary caregivers, whether it is our children in the family or our parents or a sibling. And so the flexibility and support to allow a woman to be successful both in her home job or her personal away from paid job and her job at work. So there's a tricky, I believe, seesaw to make sure that we remain flexible so everyone can succeed. And then also encouraging women that are coming up behind you. So wherever you may be, inviting them in and figuring out ways to encourage them and make it, you're able to retain, when you get to where you want to go, you're able to retain that, because that is one thing we continue to hear about. Women get to the level they want, but then sustaining that career is a whole new game.
True. Describe some of the initiatives that you're planning.
Yeah, so we have initiatives currently. We started quarterly policy calls. So that is an extension of what we did in Atlanta. At a national level, Emily Kotick with Tax Credit Coalition out of DC leads those for us. We actually have one on Monday. So those are great topics. We're talking about the new Congress and the direction that may go. That's our quarter one policy call. So we do those quarterly. We have Network National Equity Together Takes Work. That is where we have a paid consultant. So all of these classes are free to anyone that wants to learn. And we're learning about how to become more equitable at our company, no matter what level you are. And we do start with some low-hanging fruit. Like when you get an opportunity as an executive or a high-level female, Are you ever passing that down to someone that could do it below you and calling their name, calling out attention on them and expanding who is known as experts in the industry? We also hold panels for networks. So last year we did a parental leave panel. It was very cool because we invited the Army, and there is a lady named Dominique, her last name is escaping me right now, who led the charge for 16 policy changes in the US Army. We believe if you can get policy change in the Army, we can do that at our companies. And the cool part of that was one of their changes was that men, if they have a partner who that loses a child during the pregnancy phase, they get parental leave to grieve the loss of that child. So when we talk about equality in the workplace, it's not just for women, but we're going on both sides. Like there is missing equality all around the board. So that's network. We have college campus outreach. That is in the beginning stages. And what we plan to do is attend colleges around the country and explain what is the affordable housing industry. One of my sisters in WAHN, Dominique Anderson out of Tennessee, she describes it my favorite way. Affordable housing has money-making hippies too. It's not just nonprofit, government, or the thought of what people think the affordable housing industry is. So we want to bring to you, hey, what are the career opportunities when you're a student, so you're starting to learn? That's an option for me when I graduate, whether I'm an accountant, a lawyer, a developer, lenders, So we're bringing that. That's college campus outreach. We also have new chapter calls. So we're bringing on new chapters. That is our main mission at National. We lead an 8-course curriculum for a group of 5 to 6 women in each state as they want to launch their chapter. And we bring all the materials, checklists, documents that you can just fill in and make it easy, and donated services like accounting, legal, website to get your chapter up and running quickly. Some long-term initiatives we have are to start collecting data about what are our benchmarks right now? What is the diversity makeup of the affordable housing industry right now? Because we can't get our hands on that. Then once we have that benchmark, how do we measure that we become more diverse and improve what we're doing? Because without those numbers, we're not sure we can even start measuring what is an improvement. So we're excited about that. And other long-term initiatives are both under our education committee. One is a job matching and internship matching program that we would host resumes and job applications across the country, especially in the virtual world now, to help introduce companies and qualified candidates. And education in terms of bringing people that are in affordable housing now looking to move up. So people already working in the industry that might need a certificated program or want to attend a 6 weeks class on some area they want to go into in affordable housing. We want to bring that to them as well as to the tenants, because I mentioned earlier, we do believe that we can help expand what is the definition of affordable to the people living in affordable housing units now, so they can have their pick and expand what housing they're able to afford.
Well, I think that's great, because I know in talking to a lot of the multifamily developers of Section 8 or tax credit, they're saying that they just cannot find enough workers. And so if you could partner with some of those organizations to do things to really help them find and retain people, I tend to think one of the things that is important in retaining employees is culture of the organization. And the other one is onboarding. Those are the two areas that seem like if we can crack those nuts and get our organizations and workplaces to a place where people enjoy working and want to stay, then maybe we can stop the turnover that is just rampant in so many of our organizations.
And to build on that, when you say like onboarding, that's exactly what we're talking about. Like there's not capacity at a lot of companies to stop and onboard a bunch of new employees or someone that needs to have real technical experience in something to do it right under the programs. So yes, we're hoping to fill that gap. And you also, that leads to another interesting point is there are also a lot of people that are not able to take parental leave the appropriate amount of time because of the constraints of their job. So we're hoping that through these programs, we can then have, there's traveling nurses. Could there be traveling property managers that know what needs to happen or different in this sector so people can take the appropriate leave and vacation, which goes back to your culture point. That's when people are happy.
Yeah, we used to call those floaters.
Floaters. Yeah.
Those were the people that you had that did not have the job duties specifically assigned, but filled in for positions that somebody was out on maternity leave or somebody was out on sick leave or somebody quit. Then you had a floater position that could go in, and that was a highly paid position because they could address a lot of the different job duties.
Yep, exactly. It's a big missing link.
What do you see as in your organization as being different for this organization that you're talking about versus, let's say, AMA or NARO or NLHA or FADA or those organizations, other than it's primarily for women?
Sure. Yeah. So of course, primarily for women. One thing we've been noticing when we go to the different states, there might be a group that's focused on women and real estate in general, or just that locale. So like New York City, they're in the 5 boroughs, there's a women's affordable housing group, but it didn't start out in affordable housing and that's not their intention, but that's who showed up, which screams to us, there's a need in the affordable housing. But we're nationwide, we're focused on women. And I do believe a lot of those groups are focused on advocacy, and we're less on advocacy at the government level and more what we've noticed is, not noticed, this is common knowledge, the majority of people living in affordable housing are single Black females that have multiple children, or at least one child, I should say. The majority of developers in the affordable housing industry are white men. So there's a gap in maybe what is needed at those projects, or the type of housing people are looking for, housing environment. So we're excited to bridge that gap and bridge the communication between and invite diverse developers into this space as well to make sure voices at all levels are being heard and the best housing possible is being provided.
And I think that those demographics differ by size of city and parts of the country. I think the single female head of household who is Black is not necessarily the prevalent female head of household. That remains pretty much the same, but in other parts of the country and in smaller areas. And that would be an interesting one to get some statistics on and see what's really happening today.
That's a really good point, because what we know is the cities. So that's a really good point. We will add that to our stat gathering initiative because that's a good point.
Yeah, you'll see that more in certain areas of the country and definitely in large cities. But when you get out into some of the more rural areas, or you get in, particularly in the West and the North, and you start finding differences in, not much in gender, but you do see it in race and ethnicity.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well,
I'm curious about you as a person. What were the steps that you took to pivot from that secure position that you had to your new organization?
Yes. So I like to start by saying yes. So when I moved to Atlanta and I was brand new here and I attended WAHN, then I knew what that was out there. My career was very, very busy, as anyone knows in this profession. But I've made myself take classes in the fall when I was a little bit slower on things outside of my profession. So I took yoga teacher training. I took integrative health coaching. I hired an executive coach. And through all of that, what started to happen was things that were not as important to me started to melt away. And what was left was, I'm passionate about empowering women. I'm passionate about the affordable housing industry. So I do think saying yes and getting involved in a lot of things and your strengths rise to the top naturally. So that was helpful. Also, I have a personal board of directors is what I call them. So because I say yes, I meet a lot of people across the whole country, the world. And the people that are intriguing to me, including you. You're going to get added to my personal board of directors if you'll accept the position. But to call them for advice or call them about a situation and learn from them. And there are themes that come out of, you should do this, you should consider this. So there were recurring themes. Also having a very supportive family and husband that are okay with me stepping down from a very secure position is helpful. But yeah, it's the passion and the explosive growth of the organization. We have over 3,000 people on the mailing list now, and we have to remember we started this in the COVID year, meeting weekly to grow this, and had no idea that it would take off like wildflowers like it did. So the explosive growth plus the what's your strengths, what's your passion, kind of marrying together.
You know, there's so many people, so many women, particularly that I talked to today, that want to pivot away from what they've been doing for a long time, for even a career that they've had, to something that really feeds that passion that you're talking about. And financial seems to be the biggest concern that they have. Well, if I switch away and go into my own business, for instance, then how do I get my health care if I don't have somebody else, a partner to rely on at home? But you're not going to do tax accounting or anything more. You pivoted completely, right?
I pivoted. I couldn't be happier. It's 3:15 came and went yesterday, and it was a day, right? I have never been like that. I tell people tax season used to fly by, but it was also so long, right? Now it just flies by like the rest of life. And so I'm very busy with Women's Affordable Housing Network. But yeah, I think you have to focus on those considerations. But I think too, it's interesting. When I was younger, I was so focused on making sure that I was going to have stable income, stable everything. You do have to plan for it. It's not something you can jump, but there is no payment like waking up and doing what you love and you truly believe in. You know, there's no payment that can make up for. So if you have to downsize, if you have to stop getting your nails done, if it is worth everything, like you don't even want those things anymore because you are filled with, I mean, I have chills talking about it. I meet people across the country doing amazing things in affordable housing every single day. The first month I opened my calendar on Calendly, which thank you, Kat Vilma. I will give her a plug at Redstone. She told me about Calendly. It's opened my life, but I had over 68 phone calls booked in the first month, and that's people wanting to introduce us or meet us to other people. So I'm hearing about goodness all the time, and there's no paycheck that does that for you.
Well, I just wish you all the luck I possibly can think of. What are 3 takeaways that you'd like us to have from this interview?
Okay. One is there are amazing careers in the affordable housing industry. So I think it's worth everyone exploring and seeing where you fit in, because there's nothing like marrying your career to your passion or to feeling you're doing service while you're doing your career. 2, if you are working for a company that is not diverse at all levels, not just the top, not just the bottom, there are plenty of companies that are or are focused on that. So if you're working for one that is not and is not focused on or open to becoming more aware of how to be diverse, I would consider looking elsewhere, because it's a much more fulfilling work environment when they're focused on diversity. 3 would be, I think I go back to the main thing, that housing is the most important thing for a successful life. So if we're not providing people housing, we're doing a disservice to our community. And I know there's a lot of NIMBYism, and there's a lot. If you drive around most cities in America right now, if we don't provide affordable housing pops up in the form of tents on the side of a road. So I think this is a very important societal focus, that we focus on housing at all times and make sure we're housing our neighbors.
Well, I can certainly relate to what you're saying. I think I've spent, it's about 50 years in affordable housing, working in affordable housing, and I have not regretted a minute of it. It's something that I think does feed your passion if you have that passion, but it makes you feel like you're really doing something to make a difference in the world. And what can be more important than that?
And being surrounded by others that are fed by that. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much. And I just actually wish you lots of growth in your organization and many, many good things that you can pass on to other people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nan, for having us.